Hi, everyone. Gene here. Before we jump into today's show, just another quick reminder. We are working towards getting 9 new people tapping every single day as a community, not individually. And if we do this, over the course of this calendar year, we're going to add 3,000 new tappers. And that's just a really powerful thought to think of 3,000 people in this world using this amazingly powerful tool to transform their life. And if they are doing that, then our lives are going to be transformed as well. So I'm asking if you know someone in your life who could use some tapping or could learn how to use some tapping or be better at tapping or doing it more often, please share the podcast with them. It would mean the world to me, and it'll make it easier for them to use this incredibly powerful tool. Tappingpodcast.com has all of the instructions on how you can listen to the show for free on your Android device, on your Apple device, on your Alexa, how you can listen to it on Stitcher, Spotify. You can download it. There's all sorts of options. Tappingpodcast.com. Share it with a friend today. It will make a difference for all of us. This is Gene Monterostelli, and welcome to the Tapping Q&A podcast, recorded live to tape from Williamsburg in Brooklyn. This is episode 360, originally aired April 24th, 2019. I hope this finds you well wherever you are and whatever time of day you're getting a chance to listen to this. Thanks for spending some time with me today. Today we're going to have a conversation about what if it is possible to have more than relief with tapping. We're going to define what that means a little bit, and I'm going to give you a tool that is super easy to use right away that is going to make a difference in the outcome you get from tapping. And that outcome isn't that it's going to make it come faster, but it's going to help you to go farther with the transformation so you have a bigger impact for that in your life. If you have not done so already, we have a free 10-part guide that is waiting for you to download. If you haven't downloaded it yet, all you need to do is go to tappingqa.com, click on that big blue button on the top of the page, or if you happen to be listening to this right now on the website, in the right-hand corner at the top, there is a blue button. If you click on that, very easily, you'll be able to sign up for this free resource every single day. For the next 10 days, you're going to get one of those parts delivered to you. The reason why we break it up one day at a time is so you're not overwhelmed with tools and information, but every day you're going to get something small that you can use right away to make a difference in your tapping. Tappingqa.com. Again, click on that big blue button. Over the course of the last few months, what we have been doing is we have been thanking people all over the world who have been listening to and supporting the podcast. Today, I want to give a special shout out to all of our listeners in Morocco, Slovenia, Singapore, Guam, Puerto Rico, and the U.S. Virgin Islands. Thanks for making the Tapping Q&A podcast a part of your day. Also, I want to send a special shout out to Barbara. Barbara was the most recent supporter financially of the Tapping Q&A podcast. Everyone who supports the podcast in a financial way also get some amazing bonuses. This month, what I'm going to do is I'm going to be sharing a second tool with you, in addition to the one that I'm sharing in this episode, that is only available to the supporters. If you'd like to support the show, receive the amazing bonuses and the bonus podcasts, all you need to do is go to tappingqa.com/support, tappingqa.com/support, and to all of the amazing folks who are financially supporting the show so it's easier for us to get this to more people in a more powerful way. Thank you very much. Today, what I want to do is I want to teach you a tool that is going to help you to go further with your tapping. And what I mean by go further with your tapping is to have more than what you are currently getting as a result from the tapping. And where all of this came from was a confluence of a number of things all at once. Every single year, just outside of New York City and New Jersey, my friend John D. Whitus runs this really amazing event called the Spring Energy Event. And the Spring Energy Event is an opportunity for like-minded energy psychology folks to get together for 2.5 days and share ideas and share techniques and share tools and be in community and create transformation. If you'd like information, go to springenergyevent.com, get on the mailing list. It's a really delightful, wonderful event. It's going to happen again April next year. We already have some dates on the calendar. And so every single year for this particular event, John D. always picks an overarching theme so that there is some cohesion between all of the presentations that are made. This year, the event was all about possibilities. And when I heard that word, the phrase that came in my head was, what would happen if it was possible to have more than just relief? And what I mean by this is oftentimes we use tapping in a really powerful way to reduce a symptom or a pain. My pain in my knee goes from a 7 down to a 2. Tapping's wonderful. The anger that I'm feeling goes from a 9 down to a 0. I'm no longer angry. And that's wonderful. Don't get me wrong. Simply reducing a negative experience or a painful experience is a really super powerful thing. But I think we oftentimes make the mistake of only going far enough where we're just getting relief. And I see it in my clients' lives all the time when they're reporting on the tapping they've been doing on their own. And they talk about the fact that, I tapped on this thing and it was gone and that was really great. But we can have so much more. And so today what I want to do is I want to teach you a simple tool that you can use so that you start looking at your tapping in a slightly different way. And by looking at your tapping in a slightly different way, what it's going to do is it's going to give you the opportunity to have that possibility of more than just relief. So most of you are familiar with the suds scale. And if you've never heard the term suds scale, you're probably aware of it anyway. The suds scale stands for subjective units of distress. And so on a suds scale, 0 to 10, 0 is no distress, 10 is total distress. And the reason why it is subjective is because every single one of us is going to evaluate discomfort and pain in a different way. Both you and I could feel angry, and we might even feel angry at the same level, but you might call that anger a 4 from 0 to 10, and I might call it a 6 from 0 to 10. The value of that number isn't important. What's important is it's giving us a benchmark so when we tap, after we're done tapping, we can reevaluate it. If we start out at a 6 in anger and we do a round of tapping, after we're done tapping, we can say, great, tune back into that anger, 0 to 10, how big is that anger? And the SUD scale is really, really useful because if the number goes down, it's demonstrating that we are making progress. If the number goes up, it means that we're actually tuning in more acutely to the problem. And so we actually have a more powerful place to do tapping. And if the number stays exactly the same, it means that we're not approaching the problem in a way that is most useful. And so we need to do more investigation. So it's a really great, useful tool. But again, it only is taking it down to 0, which means that the symptom is gone. We're not thinking beyond that. And so another way of looking at these particular things is something that is called the SUE scale, S-U-E, and that's subjective units of experience. And the first place that I could find any reference to this is in Sylvia Hartman's work. And it is possible that it goes back further than that, but that was in my research, that was the first reference in history that I could find it. And what the difference between the SUD scale and the SUE scale is, because we're doing the subjective units of experience, there's both positive and negative experiences, where the SUD scale is just about distress. So on a SUE scale, what we have is we have something going from -10 to +10. So if I am in pain, right now my level of pain might be a -7 because it's a negative experience. And if I'm tapping and I'm tapping and I'm tapping and I bring that down to a 0, that's great. I have relief. But that removes the entire half of the scale that is in the positive. What if we considered what we wanted to have instead? So at the negative in that spectrum, it might be pain. The positive in that spectrum might be energy or flexibility. So on a scale from -10 to +10, -10 being great pain, +10 being great energy, where do you fall on that scale right now? And so what this does is when I am tapping, it gets me to think of not just what I want to remove, but what I want to have instead. Where when I'm just using the SUD scale, when I get to 0, I stop. But if I'm using the SUE scale, I might spend 2 or 3, 4 more rounds of tapping trying to add energy. Then I'm not just in discomfort, but I also have energy and flow to do something new, which is going to make a difference in how I experience things. So as a really simple way to apply this idea of a SUS scale, I've created a really simple process. So what you do to begin with is you figure out what is the negative experience you're having right now and what is the positive experience you want to have. It could be something that is energetic. It could be something that is emotional. It could be something that is physical. But what we then do is on that scale from negative 10 to positive 10, we then label that scale in that way. So a negative 10 being fear, a positive 10 being hope. Where are you at right now? And so for most of us, what is going to happen is we're going to name the negative experience first because that's what we are experiencing. Then what we're going to do is we're going to figure out what the positive is. And in just a moment, I have a couple of notes about naming the positive, but let's just go through the process. So step 1, name the negative emotion. Step 2, name the positive emotion or negative experience, positive experience. 3, rate it from negative 10 to positive 10. So on this scale that you have just created, where does it land? Now, once you have it evaluated this way, step 4, what you're going to do is you're going to do a couple of rounds of tapping and just use whatever tapping tools, skills, techniques, the story technique, the movie technique, physical sensation, saying phrases, whatever works for you. The application of tapping in this case, do it the way that makes the most sense. This is more of a framework. Now, after you do every couple of rounds of tapping, go back and re-rate it the exact same way we would do with a SUD scale. So see where it is moving. It's a negative 7. It's a negative 4. It's a positive 1. It's a positive 3. Now, after you've done a few rounds of tapping, what I'm going to ask you to do is I'm going to ask you to figure out if the emotion on the positive end of the scale is the right emotion or right experience. And the reason why I want you to reevaluate this is because in the beginning, the positive emotion might not be the best emotion possible, but it's the best emotion that you can imagine. So for example, you could start out with fear being at one end and being at peace at the other end. And that makes sense. Moving from fear to peace is something that is super, super positive. But after you do 3 or 4 rounds of tapping, you might realize that I actually want to be more than at peace. I actually want to have confidence. But in the beginning, confidence seems so unreasonable, you weren't able to come up with confidence as the positive side of the scale. So after doing a couple of rounds of tapping, what you'll do is you will now have the scale from fear to confidence instead of from fear to peace. Reevaluate the number. Now, in doing this, your number might go down because I might be at a 5 on the peace scale from 0 to 10 on that positive side, but the instant I make that emotion confidence, I might only be 2 confident. Now, this doesn't mean that you've backslid in any particular way. It just is a new subjective judgment based on where you're trying to go. And so once you've named this new emotion, do a couple more rounds of tapping. What are the things that you need to tap on so that you're actually confident around this particular issue or this thing that you're trying to do? And after you've done that a couple of times, recheck in and see if there's a new emotion, if there's a new aspiration. And it's possible after doing it once or twice, you're not going to have any new emotions. And then once you feel like you have it to a place that you're happy, then you're done. So a couple of notes on this. Number 1, you do not have to get your emotional scale to a positive 10 or the SUS scale to a positive 10 to be satisfied with doing this work. Because there are going to be times in which we can improve our emotional state, we can improve our physical state, and we don't have it to that peak place, and that's okay. It's just about moving it forward so that the next time we sit down to tap, we're in a better place, and as when we're done tapping and we go out into the world, it is more successful for us. The second thing that's really important to recognize is that when we are naming the positive end of that SUS scale, that is something that is going to be completely personal. For example, I did a little research before the presentation. I was just trying to find some emotion lists. And what I found was there was an emotion list on Wikipedia where it mentioned opposites emotions from each other. And on that particular list, fear was the negative emotion and hope was the positive emotion. And that seems reasonable that fear and hope could be opposite experiences. But for you, you might not want hope. Not that hope is bad, but for you, you want to be in a state of flow. And for you, when you are in fear, you're tight and you're congested and you're hiding and cowering away. And the opposite of that is a state of flow where you are open, you are relaxed, you're accepting possibility, you're passing through the world in an effortless way. So for you, the opposite of fear is flow. And so I say that to give yourself permission to name whatever opposite experience you want to have on that scale. Now, you don't have to draw a little scale from -10 to +10 and label it. The first couple of times I did this with myself, I found that useful just visually to see what is going on. You might just want to note the negative emotion and positive emotion from -10 to +10 where you are. But it really is that simple. Again, the steps in order. Number 1, name the negative experience that you're having, be it emotional, be it physical. Number 2, name the opposite of that. What would you like to have instead? Label that. Step 3, from -10 to +10 on this scale that you have created, where do you currently sit? Step 4, do a number of rounds of tapping. After each round of tapping, reevaluate where you are on this scale. After doing 3 or 4 rounds of tapping, step 5 is to reevaluate that positive side of the SU scale. Is it still the same emotion? Is it still the same experience? Or because you have now found your way to relief, there's actually something new and better that you would like to have instead. If that is the case, relabel the right side of the scale, re-rate your number, and do a few more rounds of tapping. None of this is to say that a SUD scale is bad. None of this is to say that simply reducing a symptom is a bad thing. You know, when I have a craving, I just need to get rid of that craving. That is enough. When I am in discomfort and I'm sitting on an airplane and I want my lower back to feel better for this flight, simply getting rid of the pain is enough. But if we consider the possibility of having something more than relief, what this does is this gives us a new opportunity to think about that. So I hope you like this tool. In the presentation, I actually taught 2 tools. And that second tool, which is actually based on the work of Rick Hansen, which we talked about a few months ago on the podcast, I am going to share that second tool with all of the folks who are supporters of the podcast. So that bonus podcast will be going up in the next week or so. If you would like to receive that second tool, you can become a supporter of the podcast. Just go to tappingqna.com/support. If you found this tool useful and you know someone in your life who would also find this tool useful, please, please, please be our ambassador. Pass it along, share it with someone else. I have some written notes on the website so you can actually see the steps written out there so you don't have to go back to the audio again and again to use it. Let me know how effective it is for you and what you have learned from it. If you have questions, if you have comments about this or anything else, I can always be reached, Gene, Gene, at tappingqna.com, or you can go to the website, click on that contact link. If you are one of those people who have downloaded the Tapping Q&A app on your Android or Apple device, if you click on the contact link inside the app, you can send me an email directly from inside of the app. You can even leave me a voice memo from inside of the app. Next week in the podcast, I'm actually going to be sharing a number of stories from individuals just like you who have used tapping in a powerful way in their life. It is good for us to hear from others so that we can learn and we can be encouraged. Make sure you check that out. Go to tappingpodcast.com so you can figure out a way to get the podcast delivered to you every single week. You can do it for free. It will show up on whatever device you have. That way you don't miss anything in the future. For the Tapping Q&A podcast, this is Gene Montrestelli. I hope you have a great day, and I will talk to you real soon. Bye-bye. The Tapping Q&A podcast is copyrighted Gene Montrestelli, Tapping Q&A 2016. All views expressed by guests are those of the guests and not necessarily of Gene Montrestelli or Tapping Q&A.